I still remember the day I was warned about the bell at Dead Man's Hill Campground, a remote outpost in the Pacific Northwest where I just started working as a park ranger. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the sun was just starting to peek over the treetops as I reported for my first day on the job. The camp supervisor, a gruff but kind man named Joe, handed me a thick binder full of rules and regulations, and as he was walking me through the facilities, he pointed to an old, rusty bell hanging from a wooden beam near the entrance. "Whatever you do, never ring that bell," he said, his voice low and serious. I laughed it off, thinking it was some kind of hazing ritual, but Joe just shook his head and reiterated, "Don't ring the bell, okay?" I didn't think much of it at the time, but as the days went by, I started to notice that the bell would occasionally ring on its own, the sound carrying far into the forest. At first, I thought it might be the wind or some animal, but as the weeks turned into months, I began to feel a creeping sense of unease whenever I heard that bell. It was always at odd hours, never during the day when the camp was bustling with visitors, but in the dead of night or early in the morning, when the only sounds were the crickets and the wind rustling through the leaves. I tried to brush it off as mere paranoia, but the bell seemed to be ringing more frequently, and I started to feel like I was being watched, like unblinking eyes were trained on me from the darkness. One night, I decided to investigate, and I snuck out of my cabin to approach the bell, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drew closer, I noticed that the rope was swaying slightly, as if someone had just pulled it, but there was no one around. I stood there for a long time, waiting to see if it would ring again, but the silence was oppressive, and I finally retreated back to my cabin, feeling a sense of relief wash over me as I locked the door behind me. But the bell kept ringing, always at the most unexpected times, and I began to feel like I was losing my mind. I started to vary my routine, taking different routes through the forest, trying to catch a glimpse of whoever or whatever was responsible for the ringing, but I never saw anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I stumbled upon an old logbook in the camp storage room that I began to understand the true significance of the bell. The logbook belonged to a former park ranger, a man named Thomas, who had worked at Dead Man's Hill over a decade ago. As I flipped through its yellowed pages, I came across an entry that made my blood run cold. The bell rang again last night, and I saw it. I saw the figure standing just beyond the treeline, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the words, and I realized that I was not alone in my experiences. But it was the next entry that changed everything. I rang the bell, and now they're coming for me. I didn't know what to make of it, but I felt a sense of dread creeping over me, like I was staring into the abyss, and the abyss was staring back. And then, one night, I rang the bell just to see what would happen, and the sound carried far into the forest, echoing off the trees, and I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. But there was only silence, a silence that seemed to grow thicker and more oppressive with each passing moment, until I realized that I was not alone, that something was standing just beyond the treeline, watching me, waiting for me, and I knew that I had made a terrible mistake. And now the bell is ringing again, and I'm not sure if I'll make it through the night.